I do want to give some props to the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library. What a great space, and they offer this space for community events, beyond just the lecture series. So hats off for that. Wonderful, wonderful bedrock part of our community. It's hard to find good spaces to do group meetings. So become a member, support the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library. So you heard a little bit about me. Normally I like to start out with a joke. So it's like, I went off and got some dental work done this morning, so I am way off my game. So I might be sweating and you're like, I'm on fumes, so I'm gonna have to pull some from the group. Old joke, like what's the last thing that goes through the bug's mind when it dies hitting the windshield? His butt, right? So it's not a very metaphysical, but it's kind of true. Come on in. Welcome. Now, I'm going to talk about upgrading the nervous system and consciousness. That is a topic that I love, that is near and dear to me in the work that I do. I would not call myself an expert in this, but I love it and I can talk about it all day. I'm happy to talk with all of you about this even beyond the presentation. As an educator, I used to love show and tell. Today I'm going to do tell and show. I'm going to talk first and then show you some things because looking at the slides, my wife looked at it a couple hours ago and said there's way too many words up there. But we'll suffer through the words and then get to a demonstration. If you have any questions or comments as we go, please feel free to interject and make it more of a discussion. How many of you do regular meditation or prayer? Okay, how about yoga or martial arts or some form of regular exercise? Okay, how many of you are working on health and wellness things? Okay, how about mindfulness? All right, how about clearing out some stuff from the past? Okay, so that's kind of the whole talk in a nutshell, so you could all go, but I'll hang a little more framework on that. Now, I get in a bad habit, like the TV, you always change the TV by pointing at it, but it's actually over there, so you'll probably see me do that. There was already a little bit of talk about this, so we'll get past that. I don't know, just some fun things you can look at as we're going through here, some things about the spine and the spinal cord since I'm a chiropractor. That's interesting, that it can make 2/3 of a circle. All right. One of the things, when I was in medical school studying, I often would look up, in studying the anatomy, it's a lot of times in the Latin. And part of that's because it's a dead language, meaning that it's not going to keep changing the words over time. And so medical terms often are in Latin. So I would look up and translate the Latin word into English and see what it says. So one of my very favorites is the lining that's around the spinal cord, the brain and spinal cord. It's like a sheath. It's called the dura mater. And in Latin, that means tough mother. So I just love that. Yeah, tough mother's got me. And then there's other structures like that. But that one has really stuck with me, that dura mater, really important. Okay, so these things are connected, consciousness and the nervous system. Again, you can probably scan through that quicker, but I apologize in advance, there's way too many words. Some big words that come up it's hard to define what consciousness is. Very hard. I looked on a lot of websites and you get all these definitions and I agree with that, but not totally. I agree with that, but not totally. That's a hard construct. What is consciousness? Some key words that jump out though, awareness, being aware of yourself. Thoughts, feelings, and this is not just as an individual, but also the collective. Where am I in relationship to everyone else? And then as we expand, there's a void, and then there's all of us, and then there's stuff even beyond that. So this is a very complex and interesting topic. The nervous system is, more my bread and butter. Complex network of nerves transmit signals. We have central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. And that's a place where there's a lot of control there. I have a granddaughter that is about 14 months old, and it's been very interesting observing the whole process of how the motor pathways form and trying to reach for an object and get control of that arm to get it, and then to be able to take a step, and then to put those steps together to walk. So think about it this way. If I want to commence walking, I'm going to have a thought. Go, walk, whatever it is, and I'm gonna walk over there. And then I'm going to start moving. And each step, there are about 200 muscles that become engaged. Well, how does that happen? Is my brain sending 200 separate thoughts, patterns, and instructions to each muscle? I would contend no, that it's not really happening that way, that there is a field and that there are patterns in that field that get established, and then I'm relying on that field. So that then I can use just a thought, and that gets converted into action. So when we talk about things like manifesting, in essence, that's what that is. And we don't come out of the womb walking. That's something that we have to practice and do. But we know that part of the human experience is that pretty much the majority of people at some point will walk. That is considered a primary pattern generator in the human species. So we can all do that. But it starts with a thought, and now I can do it without even thinking, right? I could be doing two other things, and somehow I'm moving around the room, but I'm not telling each one of my 200 muscles what to do. So just kind of chew on that a little bit. So as we start to think about consciousness, where am I in time and space? I know where the tip of my finger is. If I close my eyes, can I get this to come clear up to my nose? Well, sure, right? And there's signals that get sent. So there's this field of information that we really take for granted, but it definitely ties in with this concept of the nervous system and consciousness. Okay, so what do the experts say? So I just pulled some summaries of things off the internet to see what do the experts say about what is consciousness and how do we improve that or raise that? Daniel, and I always am like, is that amen or amen? Somebody knows the answer. Anybody know? He's on PBS a lot. They're running a lot of the specials during the pledge drives. Anyway, he's a psychiatrist. His focus is the brain health, that you can improve your brain and the field of your brain, and then he would equate that to the way that you would improve your consciousness. So he would say diet, regular exercise, brain training activities. That's the answer. Okay, I don't find fault with that, but let's see what someone else might say. Joe Dispenza, that may be a name that a lot of people know. He's a chiropractor, so right there, already a thumbs up for him. He says the key is to reprogram the brain. A lot to do with what is your belief system about who you are, where you are, what you want, and that you can change that, reprogram the brain through meditation, visualization, and other techniques. Again, there's some truth in that. Another one, Dr. Deepti Varma, clinical psychologist, and her focus is on mindfulness-based interventions. She would recommend that you practice mindfulness techniques such as breathing exercises, body scans, meditation. Again, right on the money. David Hawkins is a name that I've been doing a lot of reading of him lately. I like a lot of things that he has to say. He's very well known for laying out this spectrum of consciousness. So he has a graph that goes from 0 to 1,000, and people are in a different spot on that. And it Down at the bottom are some of the more challenging emotions, and then up at the top is enlightenment. And his idea is that we kind of come in to the world at a certain place, and then we can go up or even go down on that scale. And he did a lot of work with groups of people and a lot of research with muscle testing. So a lot of powerful stuff there, and I find that it correlates really well with the work that I do. Hi, come in. All right, so now I'm going to just tell you some of my opinions, and again, take them for that. So here's some things that I would say. Energy fields are the essence to this. Energy fields are the essence to, so we start using this term like quantum. We're doing quantum energy work. Okay, good. I love that term, but sometimes it's like a catch term. But yes, it's about the fields. I would say that the body is neutral. It just records and tells you yes or no if you do muscle testing. It doesn't put value on it. The value of that comes from a higher energy field of the mind. So what do I mean by that? If I did an experiment, and say on Scott's up here in the front row, and I blindfolded him, and then I took something really cold and put it on his arm, and then I took something really hot and put it on his arm, what would he report? The same thing, right? Because his body does not know what's hot and what's cold. It just registers, the sensor registers big temperature change, but where does that hot and cold come from? That comes from when the signal makes it up to the brain is then going to add context. Okay, we're up on Mount Ashland and there's snow everywhere. This is probably cold. So now there's an interpretation for what that is, and then some instructions about, oh, let's not get too cold, let's do these other things. Or vice versa. If you're in the desert, we're going to interpret that as hot. So, but the body itself doesn't know, it's just, it has to take that energy field from the brain and help give meaning and context to it. In the same way, I would say that the mind itself doesn't really know what itself, it needs a higher field, and that would be consciousness, and we can keep going out and out from there. That's kind of a lot to think about. This last one here is like really important in the work that I do. I would say that breath is the bridge of communication. Breath is the bridge of communication. So that's a key component to network, and I'll show you a demonstration of that a little bit later. Breath is very important. It's communicating. Different parts of us operate at different frequencies. Pain from the past can create blockages. Emotions like fear, anger, grief, etc. can limit us, and we might have walled that off somewhere, and we're not really knowing where that is. So a way that I would describe that is, I'm standing right here in the present, and the past is behind me, and the future is out there in front of me. And so if something happens, let's say our relationship turns sour, and like I'm moving on, okay? So I'm moving on, and that's in the past. Now, that could be true, but some elements of that broken relationship I'm going to bring with me, and I'm going to store that somewhere back here. In the back, we have 4 layers of muscles, and then you throw in fascia, ligaments, tendons, joints of the spine, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of good hiding places to stuff things that I don't really want to deal with right now. I'll deal with that later. My father died, and he was a real whatever, pussycat or SOB, whichever way I want to think of that, and I'll just deal with that later. I'm too busy right now. So then I move on, but have I really left that? No, and at some point grief is going to show up, maybe when I'm not expecting it, and it's going to demand some attention. So we're carrying that around with us, these stories from the past. They could be beyond that even. Let's say you have a relative that grew up during the Great Depression. They were conceived during the Great Depression. So Scarcity was a pretty big emotion in the collective during the Depression. And so that collective wisdom is passed in your genetics. So that is in you. Is it really? Well, yes, let me give you this example. Let's say that there is a forest, and in the forest, there's a certain kind of tree, and there's actual research on this. And some invading insects come, and they start eating the leaves. And the trees say, whoa, this is not good. Let's start secreting a different compound, a different scent, to repel these insects. And then through the root system and the network or field that is underground, all across that forest, all of those trees will now start putting out seedlings so that the next generation secretes that new thing to repel from that insect. Now, fast forward that out about 30 years, and 40 years, 50 years, 100 years, maybe that insect isn't even around anymore. Maybe it died off. It was only there 1 year and it didn't make it and it's no longer there. But that's now in the code that's being presented. Does that make sense? So we're doing the same thing, and we don't always know where that comes from. All right, and like I said, we're working on, I can manage this out in front of me pretty good. I don't know what's going on back here. I can't see back here. So if I've got a big hairy mole in the middle of the back, I need someone to look at it and tell me, right? And so the past is back there, and am I willing to even look at that? So a lot of that are the things that I deal with in my work. Somebody comes in and they say, oh, Doc, I've got low back pain. And then I'm like, okay, tell me the story. Well, they want to tell me the story about, well, it hurts right here, and it's when I do this. They tell me about the physical plane, and that is real. But then I want to know about the other part of the story, like what's going on in your life, because what's going on with your relationships, what's going on in your workplace, what's going on in your past. All of those things start to inform what's going on with the low back. Does that make sense? So if we're going to get to the cause of it, we're going to have to go deeper and go back further. Now, we can even go back further than that if you're a person that subscribes to past life things. Now, here's the way I would describe past life. I would call it a story, past life story. So I can have, I watch this movie and I'm like, whoa, I really resonate with this character. And then I can start taking that energy on and the story of that character, and then I can start activating my cells. They take on that story, and I can start manifesting that. Now, whether it was a real past life or not a past life, the body's, it's neutral. It's just, you're giving it a story, so it's going with it. Now, is that really true? Yes. Let's say a person has multiple personalities. Again, Scott's up here in the front row. I know Scott really well, so he has multiple personalities. So when there's Scott, he has a certain set of medical conditions. When he flips over to Eve, there's a different set of medical conditions. There's a different story that goes on with the body, the mind, the personality. Does all that make sense to you? So there's stories that are playing out in our cells and manifesting. And we've got to get to the root of some of this if we're going to make some changes. Okay, so again, metaphysical, I love all this stuff, and for some people it's a little bit too woo-woo. They just want to go to a chiropractor and have them move the vertebra around and get back to work and not talk about this stuff. But other people want to dive in a little bit more. In the work that I do, I talk about fields of intelligence. Fields of intelligence. So the first one is called bioenergetic. Bioenergetic. That is what's running your anatomy. Telling your eyes when to blink. Telling your stomach when to move. Telling your heart when to beat. All of that is happening on autopilot, and it's estimated currently that about 90% of your brain power is not conscious. It's running this bioenergetic, and sometimes it needs some reset. Okay, after that, we go to the next layer or field of intelligence, which is emotional. So I say that emotions, I would describe them as energy in motion. So you have to have an emotion if you're going to do something. By golly, we need a fence. And then I have to have some oomph to that if I'm actually going to take some action and do that. So emotion, energy, and motion. Then we have lower mental. Some people may think of that like limiting beliefs, for example, would be a phrase, another way of saying some of that. Upper mental, soul, universal spirit. So I'll give you a story that kind of talks about some of these. Let's say that I'm going to go for a hike, and I climb way up this trail, and I'm coming out to the edge, and then lower mental is all about survival. So lower mental says, don't go out to the edge, you're going to die. You tripped 3 times coming up here, oh my gosh, you're going to die. And then it might even start calling me names, you know, of what an idiot I am. Okay, so now I have to make a decision, right? Do I listen to that voice and take action on that or not? I would purport that a better thing to do is for upper mental to say, look, thank you for that information. We do need to be careful at the edge. There's death if we don't step carefully. But we've already made the decision. We're going to come out here to the edge and sit peacefully, carefully, quietly, and our soul is going to just soak this in. This is going to be so good. But thank you for that information. Okay, so we have to get to that point where we're not letting lower mental run the show. We want upper mental, soul, and then even beyond that to universal spirit to be running the show. So I'll be doing some work in a moment. I've got a couple of people that are going to get up here on tables, and I'll be showing you some of this stuff so you can see what it looks like. What are the benefits? So one of the things I love about this work is that A, we can kind of get to the root of some things, but B, we can also elevate the state of consciousness as we're doing this work. Because as you become freed from these burdens that you're carrying that you don't even know, it just allows you to have expansion. And then as you expand, you're going to have more ease and grace in your life. The key is unconditional love. The key is unconditional love. Since I had a lot of dental work done today, I'm going to need some help from the audience to boost up. So this will be a show part, but it will be, you all are going to have to invest in the situation here. So that's what's going on with that. Does anyone have a question before we switch over to the demonstration?
I do, from the
Good.
last slide.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify, benefits of what are you specifically talking about? This type of
work, this type of chiropractic in the answering the question of how do we elevate the nervous system and consciousness.
Okay.
It's not the only game in town.
And
yes.
the difference, all of these benefits that come from your type of
Yes.
chiropractic, you're saying these benefits wouldn't necessarily come from a different type of chiropractic?
Correct.
Okay.
So this kind of chiropractic is much more metaphysical, and I'm working with energy fields beyond the physical plane, which would be a traditional adjustment.
And do you need the story? What if the person doesn't have a memory?
No, we don't need the story. Because let's say I have a fireplace and I heat with wood. So I grab a stick of wood and there is bound up energy in that piece of wood. Now, do I need to know the story? Do I need to know, did that tree have friends? Did they have a kind death? No, I don't. The story doesn't matter. I want that to become kinetic and for there to be a release of heat, light, and sound. That's what I want. So the story doesn't really matter. So oftentimes what will happen is there's just heat coming off a person's body and it's not necessarily identified. Now that would depend on how perceptive the individual is. And some people are really perceptive and some are not, so there'll be less story. In other words, some people might get off the table and say, I just feel really relaxed. And I'll say, yeah, I saw some like heat radiating off of your neck at one point and your breath got deeper. Okay, cool. There doesn't have to be a big story. Another person gets off the table and says, oh, I had tea with Buddha and then this and then that and then this. And I'm like, wow, cool. I didn't see that necessarily, but really cool. I would say for me, the more intense it is, the more I get. So as an example, last week, woman's on the table. I put my hand on her, and I could feel the frequency of grief. I've done it enough, I can feel it and say, oh, that's what it is. So I said, I feel grief. And she says, yes, my dog died a couple months ago, yes. Okay. So then I'm continuing, all I'm doing is palpating, just touching her body, right? I go to the base of our neck and I say, whoa, there's anger here. Are you in the stage of anger in your grief? She says, yes. And I just held my finger there. So now her awareness is going to that spot. All I'm doing is lightly using my finger to touch that vertebra. And then she has an emotional release and starts processing that. And then she says, yep, I went away after the dog died. I came back home, and when I walked in the door, my grief was waiting for me. And yes, I guess if you really ask me, yeah, I'm kind of pissed off about it. So it's like, okay, well, let's do that. Now, we can get through something better if we go into it and process it and don't run away from it, right? So like if my relationship with my father was poor and I don't want to deal with it and I spend much of my life running from that, that's going to be a longer, harder process than if I allow myself to just get into it. Now, I'm not here to do talk therapy. That's someone else's job. I'm not here to get into the story, but the story can bubble up. Maybe that's a better way to say it. All right, anybody else? Yeah?
Define universal spirit combination.
Okay, so that is a tough one because it's like beyond soul. So if you start thinking about all souls and beyond, I can't even totally define that for you.
Is that the collective beyond each
Yes.
individual soul?
Yes.
Okay. Great.
That would be the most simplistic way that I would say that. Yeah.
So your definition of the key, unconditional love.
Yeah.
What is that, and how does it play into what you're describing?
So really my job is to pay attention. The person will start face down, so I'm paying attention to the back. All the stuff from the past is back there, and I may also feel some emotion that they're feeling right now, but it's to pay attention to the body. It's like peeling layers of the onion. What's at the surface ready to be dealt with? And then I'm going to help bring awareness to that, and then bring their breath to that, and then let them start moving through that. And it might be really simple. They don't have a story and there's just heat coming off, or it might be more emotional. There might be some emoting that happens. Ashland is a town where many people have a very slow, gentle rhythm. When I moved here from the East Coast, just getting on and off the freeway took me some adjustment. I was used to much faster, chop, chop, get on, get off, and that's not the way the exits are around here and the way people start slowing down a mile ahead. So on the table, it's quiet and gentle. But it might be deep or it might not be. Okay, well, let's, I've got two people that are going to come and jump up on the table and be our guinea pig. And just again, that we're going to be recording. So if you are against that, then we better not have you do it. But we'll maybe clear the front row, and then you'll be able to just demonstrate. I'll demonstrate this, and you can see some things happening. How many of you have had network care before? You've experienced this? Yeah, so quite a few people. This will be old stuff for you. Just do it like that.
Did you say network?
Network.
Yeah.
Network chiropractic, yes. All right, so come on up. And Joyce,
She just went to the
went to the bathroom real quickly? Okay. Now, Corinne has a very rapid and gentle breath wave, but it's very much exterior so you can see it. So that's why I want her to do this. So I'll start with her while we're waiting, and then Joyce will come in. So the first thing we're going to do is just observe breath. We want to see the breath change, and we want to see where things are, like where does your awareness go, where's some stuckness at. We want to also be feeling the emotional energy around her. In traditional chiropractic, what we would do is if we found some place where it's out of alignment, then we want to put a force in and push that back. To me, that's where there's some bound up energy that we can use as fuel to make some change. All right, turn your head that way. Middle, left. So I'm going to make light touch and just encourage her nervous system to use her breath and to expand, and then for her breath to just roll along the surface of her body as a communication tool between the field of her mind and the field of her body. So in just a second, we'll get that rolling. So she's searching for it. And I made the contacts down here, so little vortex opens up, and then her breath is going to roll along with that, come up to the head, and then return. So that movement, some people won't move, some people will move a lot. And everyone has a unique way that their nervous system takes in energy and moves it. So hopefully you can, get a sense of what's happening with everybody just by watching this. So we're the field, as I come down to it, it's like if I say, would you scratch my back right there? I'll show you where that spot is. So coming down to her, as I get closer to it, like it's right there. That's kind of the edge of where that field is. So we're out about that far. So we're between the bioenergetic and the emotional field. So I'm just going to let her kind of work on this. There's like it's sort of like going fly fishing, right? Like I'm out fly fishing, and well, the current's going really strong over there. I'm not going to fish over there. Oh, over there, it's swirling right there, and there's part of a log sticking. I bet there's a fish over there. That's where I'm going to go. So I'm kind of doing the same thing. It's like, where is that stuck spot? Where's that bound energy? Where can I go and bring her awareness to that spot so that she can catch fish or move through that? And it's about right here. Now, I don't know a story on that. It's just, I'm reading the water like a fisherman's reading the water. But I'm reading that on her breath and what's going on with her body. So we'll let that roll for a second, and I'll start over here. So first thing I'm looking at is breath. Not a lot, right? So we want way more breath when we are as we're going through this process. Okay. She's already to start without me. Turn to the right, middle, and now left, and middle. Okay. 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 So she's got a lot of tension up here, upper cervical at the top of the neck. I'm going to work on it from down here, kind of like a remote control. I want to get change up to here. So I'm looking for that it spot. There was a lot of energy there. Okay, way more up here. So I'm going to come up here. Now, this is a place on the spine where mother stuff tends to settle. So I'm guessing that there's some mother stuff, but I don't know. So I want to see some change in breath. I'm looking for places that might seem a little stuck. Now, can you hear her breathing? So it's a little more emotional. There's some emotion behind that. Now, she's not emoting. She could probably be making a lot more noise. She's probably holding back to not scare you. Okay, and so over here, there's still some good stuff happening in there. There's a lot of rocking going on up here. It's kind of just bypassing this zone right here. So then I'm wanting more of it to come through here, because the breath is what's doing the communicating. It's bringing her awareness to where things are stuck or stored. Okay. Doing on time. Okay, pretty good. Good. Okay. Now the tension on that dura mater, the lining around the spinal cord and brain, I can get a sensation for how tight that is clear down here at the ankle, and that's dropped a lot already. Let's see. I think I found the spot. So it's a pretty light touch. I'm just doing that much. I'm not putting a lot of force in. But then we can make a lot of change. Then at some point when I get to the edge of the field, then I'll know what level of intelligence we're on. So she's clear out to here, so I could do some more work with that. So go to the other end of the table, face up, please. In about 1 more minute, then you can go to the other end. Okay. So this is where the part where I'm going to want you to help participate. So we're going to go to some, more upper levels. So we're going to go, let's go up to soul with this. And I want you to pump up the energy in the field. So you're just intending for her to have more love. Whatever you can muster, you're giving it to her. Okay? And that will help build the energy in the room so that she's got more to work with. Does that make sense? Okay. Good. I'm going to pull on some heartstrings. Clear up to there. We're stretching the field of the heart. Good. So I'm going to get a dance going between these two gateways and the heart. Finding some resonant energy underneath. Good. More breath. Very good. Okay. Come all the way in. Good. There it is. Good. Right there. Good. way out, way out. There you go. Okay, good. Okay, now let's do some weaving. Okay, so we'll come into that energy field, where those gateways are. One on each side of the neck. We're going to weave that in with the heart field. Get some oscillating going on. What are you feeling in the room right now? Anyone?
Cohesion.
Yeah.
Some grief.
Mm-hmm.
Hope.
Okay, I'm going to let her sit with that. Okay, there's a lot more bioenergetic going on here. So I would probably, in a clinical setting, be doing way more of this lower level stuff. But, you know, we're doing show and tell, so she can do it. You can see how the back arches up. That the heart is just lifting, 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 trying to get higher, higher, higher to join in this dance. And everything changes. Arms down, heart up. Arms down, heart up. Arms down. There you go. Heart up. Yeah, right there. Good. Very good. More breath. There we go. Good, 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 good. So this gets us to ecstasy. Whoa, this is pain, right? So when I was at the dentist this morning, it was like, oh, different breath pattern than this. Okay. So there's really good ease and rhythm here. I think we can go a little more. That's really good. Okay. I think this is like reconnecting with your true self. Like, oh, I remember who I am. Yes, this is who I am. We're kind of done here. I need to just let this sit. So what are some observations from anyone in the room going through this process as we're kind of like peeling through these layers? Some people can look at this and say, little voodoo-y for me, I don't know if I want that. The first time I saw it, I was like, I don't think this is chiropractic. I don't know if I want to do this. But then another part of me said, but I want some of that. And then I kept going back, and then I fell in love with it. And then it was like, this is all invisible. How do I do this? How do I work with these fields that are invisible? And so I'm still in that process. But I love this because it's not just one thing. We can go through these different layers, and each person then, we're in the process of remembering who we really are and moving back towards source. That's really what we're doing.